Today, we're trying to solve an equation that has variables on both sides. To do this, we have the same exact goal as we did when we were solving equations with a variable on one side. What is that goal? Well, we want to isolate the variable, which means get the variable by itself. In this equation, the variable is f. Therefore, we want to isolate f, or get it by itself. So how do we do that? Well, the first thing we must do is to separate the two parts of the equation. I do this by drawing my Tower of Awesome right down the middle of the equal sign. Now I can completely visualize the two parts of the equation. Remember that when solving equations, there are two main rules. Rule number one is to keep the equation equal, which means what you do to one side, you must do to the other. And rule number two is that you may only combine like terms. So let's get started. Because there is a variable on both sides, it doesn't matter where we start. As long as we perform legitimate operations, we will solve the equation successfully. I am going to start on the 8 minus 3f side. Let's look at the minus 3f first. I want to get rid of the minus 3f. The opposite or inverse operation of subtraction is addition. So to get rid of the minus 3f, I need to add 3f. But I'm not done. Because remember, what I do to one side of the equation, I must do to the other. Therefore, I will add 3f to the other side. Now I can complete the operations. On the left side, we now have 2 plus 6f, and on the right side, we just have 8 because our 3f's canceled out. Next, I want to get rid of the 2 because remember, we are trying to isolate the variable. To get rid of the 2, we must subtract 2 from each side because, remember, we need to do the opposite or the inverse operation. After subtracting 2 from both sides, we get 6f on the left side and 6 on the right side. Recall that a number and a letter that are together without a sign in between them means that you're multiplying them. The inverse of multiplication is division, so therefore, to get the f by itself, I want to divide both sides by 6. After dividing both sides by 6, I get 1f equals 1, which I can just write as f equals 1 because 1f is the same thing as writing f, right? There's only one of them. Now that the variable is isolated, we have our answer. The last thing we need to do is check to ensure that if we replace f with 1, the equation will be true. Let's try that now. After plugging in 1 for f, we have 2 plus 3 times 1 equals 8 minus 3 times 1. Simplified, we get 2 plus 3, remember the order of operations, and 8 minus 3. Lastly, we will compute 2 plus 3, which equals 5, and 8 minus 3, which also equals 5. So, when f equals 1, we get 5 equals 5, which is a true statement. We have solved the problem correctly. Now, let's try another example. The next equation we have is 20 minus 7x equals 6x minus 6. Our variable is x, and therefore we are trying to isolate it. First, I am going to draw my Tower of Awesome. Do not forget the step. Next, I am going to look at the minus 7x. To get rid of it, I am going to do the opposite operation, which is addition, and add 7x to both sides. Now I am left with 20 on the left side and 13x minus 6 on the right side. I want to isolate the variable, so therefore I want to get rid of that minus 6 on the right side, and to do that, I am going to add 6 to both sides, which leaves me with 26 equals 13x. I am almost through, but the x is not quite isolated yet. To finish solving the equation, I notice that the 13 and the x are next to each other without a sign in between them, meaning that they are being multiplied together. And the opposite operation of multiplication is division, so I must divide both sides by 13. After performing the last operation, I get 2 equals 1x, better written as x equals 2. Lastly, we must check our work by plugging in 2 for x in the equation to ensure that the equation is true when x equals 2. So we have 20 minus 7 times 2 equals 6 times 2 minus 6. Remember the order of operations. So we get 20 minus 14 equals 12 minus 6. Lastly, we simplify and get 6 equals 6, which is a true statement. We have solved this problem correctly. Now we have learned how to solve equations with variables on both sides. Any questions?